Flight 24/7. It's strange how the most pivotal moments of our lives often begin in the most mundane places. For me, it's the cramped bathroom of Trans-Pacific Flight 1247, 35,000 feet above sea level, when the first tremor rips through the cabin. At this moment, I'm just another passenger with a spike of anxiety from the turbulence we just experienced, making the smart faucet in the bathroom require all of my focus, completely oblivious to the fact that fate has begun its countdown. Why does everything always come down to timing? 5 minutes earlier, and I would have been safely strapped into PODEC, connected to my assigned neural interface, already synced to the emergency protocols. The bathroom mirror catches my reflection as the cabin lights shift from institutional LED 2A to a pulsing amber hue. My heart stutters. I know that color. How people used to fly in these things before EES came around, I'll never understand. They were basically flying in an air-conditioned metal tub with wings. Everyone that flies on Trans-Pacific knows that color. Catastrophic system failure and the emergency evacuation system has begun. In the old days, this would have meant certain death. But in 2147, commercial aircrafts have evolved from their fragile predecessors. The Airbus Quantum Aeroline doesn't just fly. They adapt, transform, and when necessary, shed their parts like a snake shedding its skin. I lunge for the door. One of the only remaining places on board that doesn't have its own EES protocols. My fingers slipping on the handle, slick from the soapy water that just cleansed my skin of any dirt, germs, and other microorganisms that I collected while on board. My savior might be my demise, I say out loud to myself, spurring myself into hurried movements, wiping my hands down my shirt, hoping to gain more traction on the door handle. Fuck! I scream as the handle and door refuse to move. The status light begins blinking an infuriating red as the message, "Door locked for catastrophic system failure protocol," scrolls across the ticker above the door lock. What usually tells passengers which water closet is in use is now taunting me with my impending fate. The first automated announcement over the intercom sends ice racing through my veins. My lungs are straining against my rib cage as I try to calm my panicked breathing. Attention, passengers. CSFP number 7 has been initiated. Please remain in your seats, in your designated pod. Quantum separation will begin in 3 minutes. 3 minutes. The word echoes around in my head, like a ball bouncing through a pinball machine. Under normal circumstances, that would be plenty of time for the pods to detach cleanly, their individual gravitational fields engaging as they descended safely to the nearest emergency landing zone. But I'm not in my pod, trapped in my tin can coffin, in the one section of the plane designed to stay with the main hull, the section that goes down with the ship. My mind whirs as I try to remember the schematics video they played at the beginning of our flight. The ones no one ever pays attention to because yada yada, remain in your pods and stay secured to your neural link for the most secure flight, yada yada. Trying not to think of how my sister had mocked me for even watching the video. You're such a germaphobe, I am sure you can make it one flight without washing your hands. It's only an hour-and-a-half flight, Nova, so she had drug my name out just to grate on my nerves. This bathroom is just between PRDRZ and PRDD. Only a sealed door and 20 feet separating me from my salvation. The neural link in my travel band is already buzzing frantically, trying to sync my pod. Another tremor, stronger this time. From the tiny crevice of a bathroom window, I catch a glimpse of PADA silently detaching, its edges alight with blue-green fire as its gravitational field adjusts to the atmosphere around it. Beautiful, yet terrifying. 2 minutes until quantum separation. The second automated announcement sounds over the intercom. 2 minutes. Think. 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 There has to be a way out of here. My fingers trace the door's edge, feeling for there. A manual release panel, disguised as a part of the trim. The kind of backup system engineers include, but never expect anyone to actually use. I dig my nails into the seam and pull. The panel snaps off with a crack that sends me stumbling backwards. Behind the handle is a simple mechanical lever, a startling piece of analog technology for this quantum aeroline. I pull it down, instinctually throwing my body against the door. It bursts open with a pneumatic gasp, nearly sending me sprawling onto the floor. When my feet hit the smart polymer floor, I send up a silent prayer of thanks. The material has already started transforming, preparing for atmospheric re-entry, its texture shifting from a sleek, aesthetic design feature to a practical, high-traction surface designed for an emergency. In the distance, I hear the hydraulic hiss of PRD beginning its separation from the mainframe. That's when I see it. My salvation. Pansatsi. I press my neural link band against PUDC's access panel, desperately hoping it will override the security protocols. Each buzz from the band feels like a rock dropping in my stomach. It rejects me once, twice. The authentication failures flashing across the display screen in angry red letters. 1 minute until quantum separation. 1 minute until quantum separation. The automated announcement taunts me over and over again. Panicking, I run my fingers over the screen, looking for anything to try. When in doubt, restart right? The thought flits through my mind. I use my fingers to pry open the panel cover, revealing a simple, glowing red button. Such an archaic solution, hiding in plain sight, a physical reset in a world of AI and neural commands. Slamming my hand against it, I pray to whatever gods might be listening that the oldest trick in the tech world will work one more time. 30 seconds until quantum separation. The announcement washes over me like a bucket of ice water. The walls of PODC begin to vibrate as the clamps begin to initiate their release sequence. The panel flickers from red to amber. The reset seems to have done something, not a full access grant, but a system reboot that might give me enough time. Emergency reset detected. System reinitialization in progress. The words flash across the access panel. I run. The door to PRD slides halfway open, then freezes, caught between evacuation and reboot protocols, forcing my body through the gap, ignoring the sharp parts of the doorframe cutting into my clothes and skin, willing my body to get as small as possible. The system blares warnings through the pod speakers. Unauthorized entry detected. Security breach in PODC. Inside, the other passengers stare at me with a mixture of shock and confusion. The woman they had written off as collateral damage amongst the wreckage of this impending crash, defying both protocol and probability. The flight attendant assigned to our POD makes to move towards me, then hesitates as another announcement cuts through the chaos. 10 seconds until quantum separation. I dive into my seat. The neural interface recognizes my presence as soon as my hand hits the armrest. The familiar tingle of the neural link washes over me as the pod's systems integrate my biometrics into their separation calculations. For a moment, I think I can feel the algorithms adjusting, compensating for my return. My body sags with relief as my harness straps me into the pod. Did I damn us all with my return? The wrath of La Vipera. Nera. How long has it been? Ale's mouth was dry, but sweat dampened his lips. 47 minutes, a voice replied. Closing his eyes, Ale drew in as much breath as his lungs would allow, then let it out in a deep sigh. 47 minutes. It felt like hours. There was no clock on the wall, no sunlight in the windows, no way for him to gauge how long he'd been captive. He would just have to keep asking. He sat in a steel chair, his hands tied behind his back. The room around him was pitch dark, and though impossible, it seemed to be growing even darker. It would still be light outside. He'd been taken just before he was to meet his wife for dinner. But to him, it felt like night. The thought of his wife sent a sharp jolt of worry down his spine. Would she do as expected and try to rescue him? He could hope not, but that hope would be irrational. She would come for him. She was the reason he'd been taken in the first place. The only ounce of hope that remained. was the certainty he had that she would not make rash decisions. She would plan. She would prepare. She wouldn't let her emotions fog her judgment. At least, he was pretty sure she wouldn't. He tried to use his brain. He tried to gather as much information as he could, but the room seemed to muddle his senses. The air was thin, hot, and smelled of dust. An attic? No, the floor was cool, hard, concrete. It felt small enough that had they not been tied, he could reach out his arms and touch both walls. But whoever spoke to him certainly was further than that. Their voice didn't bounce off the concrete floor. It didn't reverberate off any walls, but he could tell which direction it came from. They weren't close enough that he could sense them near him, but the room felt far too small for them to be more than an arm's length away. He would have to rely on something else. What could he remember? He had just left the house. His head was down, and he was fiddling with his car keys. He didn't see them coming. He was suddenly flung forward, having been shoved from behind with the force of a linebacker. He braced to hit the ground, but had been caught by two more pairs of hands. One, calloused and rough, covered his mouth as another threw something around the top of his head. It was soft. A blanket? A sweatshirt? Something that could be tied. He had kicked wildly, tried to pry the hand from his face, tried to scratch, tried to bite, but it made no difference. His heart was pounding in his ears, but he heard a car approach. Fear forced his muscles to tighten to the point of pain. He tasted the coppery, metallic taste of blood, but it was from his own cheek, caught in the clenching of his jaw. The sound of a car door sliding broke through the fullness in his ears. A van. He felt his feet lift off the ground, a pain stabbing under his arms where he'd been held. He came down hard on the floor of the vehicle, his face feeling cold where the hand had lost its grip. A scream grew in his throat, but hardly made it out of his mouth before he was harshly grabbed again, the hand returning to his lips. The door slid closed, and he felt the vehicle lurch forward. His hands, sweaty and shaking, were pulled behind him and tied together. Someone spoke from the front of the van, firm and demanding. "Don't hurt him unless you have to. The less damage we do, the better." That should have been reassuring, but he knew he wasn't the target. His wife had made enemies. It was inevitable in her line of work, and he knew the danger. Years with no incidents had given him a false sense of security. He should have taken the time to prepared. A self-defense class or two might have done him some good, or learning to shoot a gun. It wasn't for his wife's lack of insistence. He just kept putting it off. And now it was too late. Surely she had prepared, right? Surely she wouldn't fall for a trap like this. She was clever. He had faith in that. He didn't know how long they'd driven, not for sure, but it was long enough for the hand on his mouth to relax, and for him to know that yelling wouldn't help him. When the van stopped, he'd been pulled out of it and carried through a heavy door he remembered hearing slam. He heard the sound of heavy footsteps on stairs and the echoes that followed. A stairwell, then. He struggled to focus, the shoulder of one of his captors digging uncomfortably into his gut. He tried to shift himself to sit more comfortably, but he found he was held too tightly. There was the sound of unintelligible whispers, another heavy door, and moments later he was lowered to his feet and pushed down onto a hard metal chair. Alessandro Fochetta. It wasn't said as a question. They knew who he was. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of a response. Your wife, La Vipera Nera. How much do you suppose you're worth to her? He couldn't fight them off. He knew that the second they'd assaulted him, but he could keep his mouth shut. He heard his interrogator tap impatiently on something. A table? I'm sure it's hard to place value on things when you're the most successful thief in Los Angeles. Money doesn't mean the same thing to you as it does to everyone else, does it? Silence. Again. Al was sure he'd make it out of this. And if his wife did too, she'd surely have something to say about being called the most successful thief in LA. Successful? Without a doubt. Thief? She'd fume at the label. He found it hard not to laugh aloud at the thought. They were right. Money didn't mean the same thing to them. It meant something far different 15 years earlier, when the two of them survived off bread, peanut butter, 69 boxes of dried pasta, and canned tuna. But now? Did money mean anything at all anymore? It doesn't matter. Once she sends us $20,000, you're free to go. Al felt a smile form on his lips. He tried to swallow the laugh that was threatening to burst from him, but it came out anyway. He heard a clatter, something thrown to the floor. Anger laced his interrogator's voice. What the fuck is so funny? Ale sucked in his lips, trying to stifle his laughter. 20,000. Oh, so you've gone and pissed off La Vipera Nera for $20,000? He fought another wave of laughter, reminding himself where he was. He didn't know these people. They could still kill her. There were plenty of people who'd pay more than $20,000 for her head. You could have asked her for $20,000. She might have wondered what for. But she knows what it's like to be desperate for money. It's what had gotten her into the business she was in, after all. Instead, you decided to kidnap her husband and hold him for ransom. No, I don't think she'll give you the money. even if you really were just going to let me go. I think she's going to kill you." He felt a rush of cool air as the man stood. "You better hope she makes this easy for all of us." And with that, he was gone. Ale leaned back, feeling the cool steel of the chair through his shirt. It felt nice. Wherever they had him, they hadn't bothered to turn on any air. He wondered what plan his wife would cook up, and let himself imagine it for a few minutes. The silence was broken by footsteps on the hard floor, and he felt someone lean over him. His breath quickened, but he forced it to slow. Their hand gripped the cloth at his head, and he felt a rush of cooler air against his forehead as it was removed. He opened his eyes, expecting to take in a view of the room, but it was complete darkness. He didn't hear the person retreat, but he no longer felt them next to him. How long has it been? He was suddenly aware of how dry his mouth was. "Half hour," a voice answered. It wasn't his interrogator. It was too shaky, too unsure. He sounded young. Someone roped into a task that was way over his head. Ale almost felt sorry for him. He didn't know how long his wife would take. Part of him hoped it wouldn't take long at all. But part of him knew that the longer it took, the more solid her plan would be. In the meantime, the room seemed to suffocate him. Sweat beaded on his face. He could feel it slide down his neck. He hoped he'd be conscious when she finally did come. He felt as if he was swaying, but in the darkness, he couldn't quite tell. How long has it been? 47 minutes. It had to be close to an hour now. He would have to prepare himself for hours longer. He wished he had a drink. Suddenly, a wedge of light illuminated the room as a door swung open. Al turned away, unaccustomed to the brightness. Through squinted eyes, he took in what he could of the room. The walls were covered with foam squares to dampen the sound. The only furniture was the chair where he sat, and an office chair that sat parallel to him. He could see someone standing in the corner, still bathed in darkness. The person who'd been keeping track of time. How had he done so? In the dark. There hadn't been the light of a phone, at least that Al had noticed. A frantic boy entered, his face pale and drenched in sweat. "Cut his hands free. We need him. She's here. She's inside." He looked over his shoulder as if expecting her to jump out at him. The man in the corner was clearly shaken by the words, jumping forward to cut the tie at Alay's hands. Inside. How did she get inside? Darwin was guarding the... She shot him. She didn't even say anything. She just came out of nowhere, shot him, and forced her way in. He sounded as if he was fighting back tears. Al wasn't the vengeful type, and under most circumstances, neither was his wife. He'd be lying if he said he didn't feel at least a little bad. "So what are we going to do?" "Give him to her. That's what she's here for, isn't it? Ayla felt their fear, though he wasn't sure why. He had been them, or at least similar to them. He had been a terrified 20-year-old, not sure where his next meal would come from, not sure what he would have to do to make rent. These two certainly didn't seem the masterminds behind this plan, regardless. No, that was the man who'd interrogated him. A man old enough to know better. A man arrogant enough to think he could kidnap Alessandro Foccetta and live to tell the tale. And with an extra $20,000 in his pocket. The man who was in here before. The one who asked me questions. Who is he? They froze, or as near to freezing as they could get while still shaking. His name! I need his name! There was more force behind his words now. They shifted uncomfortably on their feet. Leon Metzger, Ayla nodded. With the door open, he could hear someone yelling, and the crack of a gunshot. I can find my way from here. He left the room, closing the door behind him. Sparing them could be dangerous, but killing them would be senseless. Metzger was the one he wanted. Plus, he could easily give them $10,000, and he was sure they'd do whatever he asked. He could remember when 10,000 seemed life-changing. The hallway outside the door was like that of a parking garage, only narrower. It was concrete on the walls and floor, with large, orange-tinted lights along the ceiling. He went toward the commotion. This wasn't a massive operation, half a dozen men at most, and two of them were in the room he'd just left. How many stood between him and his wife? He broke into a run, hoping the next person he ran into would be her. Another gunshot rang out, the sound bouncing its way down the halls. He was close. He turned a corner to see his knight in black, bulletproof armor, a seething glower on her face. Her expression immediately brightened as she hastened to him. Are you all right? Are you hurt? She looked him over, seeming afraid to touch him in case he was injured. I'm fine. I'm assuming you are too. He poked playfully at the bulky vest she wore. She nodded, but her face grew serious again. How many were there? She started down the hallway, 4 at most. He would tell her the truth when she didn't have a gun in her hand, and she wasn't searching for men to kill. Leon Metzger, he's the one in charge. I've taken down 3, so that leaves Mr. Metzger. He wouldn't charge at the woman with a gun. So where is he hiding? Metzger didn't give them the chance to wonder. He appeared down the hall as if on cue, turning and confidently leaning against the wall. There she is, the famed Black Viper herself. You really are as fearsome as they say, aren't you? Honestly, I didn't. Another gunshot, then another, and another. Metzger crumpled to the floor like a thrown rag doll. Al heard his wife sigh heavily. From relief, he was sure. She turned to face him, taking him into a strong embrace. The Velcro of her vest scratched at his face, but he didn't care. He was safe. She was a criminal. She drew attention and danger, but so long as she was there, he knew he was safe. She pulled back, tucking the gun against her back in the waistband of her pants. "Are you sure you're all right?" She moved her hands along his arms and chest, as if checking him over. "I'm okay, really." He held a hand to his stomach. "I'm kind of hungry, though. Starving, actually." She laughed, wrapping an arm around him and leading him towards the exit. She paid the lifeless bodies no mind as they walked past, and Al did the same. "We still have enough time to get to our dinner reservations," she said cheerfully as he pulled open the door for her. "Actually, I'm really craving pasta. The dried pasta we used to get, with the jarred sauce from the dollar store." She gave him a questioning look, but only for a moment. Yeah, that sounds perfect." What lies behind her mirror? Detective Sarah Chen stared at the ornate Victorian mirror, its silver surface reflecting nothing but shadows in the dim light of the abandoned mansion. 3 days, 3 women missing, and all connected to this house. The mirror seemed to mock her with its emptiness. "Find anything?" Detective Mike Rodriguez's voice echoed from the hallway. "Just another dead end," Sarah replied. But something about the mirror kept drawing her attention. The curved floral patterns along its frame seemed to shift in her peripheral vision. But when she looked directly at them, they were perfectly still. "The homeowner's alibi checks out," Mike said, entering the room. "He was in Tokyo when the first woman disappeared." Sarah traced her fingers along the mirror's frame. "What about his wife?" "That's where it gets interesting." Mike pulled out his notebook. "Mrs. Eleanor Wright hasn't been seen in public for 6 months. Neighbors say she became a recluse after their daughter's suicide last year." Sarah's hand froze on the frame. Suicide? That wasn't in the case file, because it wasn't ruled a suicide officially. The daughter, Rebecca Wright, 19, was found in this room, in front of this mirror, with no signs of trauma. Toxicology came back clean. They called it natural causes, but 19-year-olds don't just die of natural causes, Sarah finished. She leaned closer to the mirror, her breath fogging the glass. For a moment, she thought she saw something move behind her reflection, a shadow darker than the others. "Here's the part that'll give you chills," Mike continued. "Each of our missing women reported seeing someone following them in mirrors before they disappeared. Their therapists all noted it as a shared delusion." Sarah stepped back from the mirror. "All 3 saw someone in mirrors, a woman in a black dress, according to their descriptions. They said she would watch them, getting closer each time, but only in reflections, never in real life. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Sarah pulled her jacket tighter. "We need to talk to Mrs. Wright." "Already tried. The housekeeper says she hasn't left her room in 3 months. Won't see anyone. Won't talk to anyone." Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from forensics. "Lab results are in on the dust samples from the missing women's homes. Anything useful? Traces of silver nitrate. And..." Sarah squinted at the screen. "Something they can't identify. Some kind of organic compound they've never seen before." A floorboard creaked behind them. Both detectives spun around, but the doorway was empty. When Sarah turned back to the mirror, she caught a glimpse of movement, a flash of black fabric disappearing around the edge of the reflection. "Tell me you saw that," she whispered. Mike shook his head. "Saw what?" Sarah approached the mirror again, her heart pounding. The frame felt cold under her fingers, much colder than it should be. "We need to get this mirror to the lab. Sarah, it's just a mirror. We need to focus on finding Mrs. Wright. And 3 women are missing, Mike. All saw someone in mirrors before they vanished. Rebecca Wright dies mysteriously in front of this specific mirror. And now I'm seeing..." She stopped, realizing how it would sound. "You're seeing something in the mirror, too?" Mike's voice carried a note of concern. "Maybe you should take a break. You've been working this case non-stop for..." A laugh echoed through the room. High, feminine, and definitely not coming from either of them. Mike drew his gun, scanning the shadows. "NYPD, show yourself." Sarah couldn't move. In the mirror, a woman in a black Victorian dress stood directly behind her. But when Sarah spun around, there was nothing there. The figure remained in the reflection, smiling. "Mike," Sarah's voice shook. "Look in the mirror." He turned, and his face went pale. That's not possible." The woman in black raised a finger to her lips, then pointed to something behind them. Against their better judgment, both detectives turned. A door had appeared in the wall, a door that hadn't been there moments ago. It stood slightly ajar, revealing a silver glow beyond. "Call for backup," Sarah said, drawing her weapon. Mike already had his phone out. No signal. The woman in the mirror laughed again, the sound seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. When they looked back at the reflection, she was gone. But words had appeared in the fog of Sarah's breath on the glass. "Come find us. We need to leave," Mike said, backing toward the room's entrance. "Now." But Sarah stood transfixed by the mirror. In its depths, she could now see multiple figures. Women in modern clothing, frozen in poses of terror, their faces familiar from the missing persons reports. And behind them, barely visible, was Rebecca Wright, mouthing 2 words over and over. "Help us. The killer isn't Mrs. Wright," Sarah whispered. "It's the mirror." Somehow, it's the mirror. That's impossible. Mirrors don't kidnap people. Mirrors don't kill. 3 months ago, I would have agreed with you. Sarah's fingers found a catch in the mirror.